Aftermath. After Jane walked away, Thane stood. A broken puppet. Yalis's strings revealed to be not indoctrination, but as he had feared, and as Jane had understood, his own will that had pulled at him for weeks, tense and fraying, but holding him on his course. Damned by the fact that he had wanted to know, wanted to see everything that had happened to her in that room. And he got his wish. He had needed to know in order to reverse, avenge what had happened. And then he had needed to know like a flagellant, tearing off his own flesh, his own mind, as he watched and listened. Once again, his Siha had taken his failings onto herself, bore them with the fortitude she had shown in that room. She had not asked a single question about what had happened to her. She had had her memories stolen from her so often. The times she'd lunged at Yalis, the times she'd seen through the pain, the compulsions, the drugs, even the indoctrination on her own. The times she'd seen through Yalis and reached out with that unbearable compassion that made him understand his relationship with her. In Jane's eyes, he had always been a child. His childish behavior had been forgiven. The harm he'd done had been forgiven, dismissed with a snap of her fingers because she had known the shape of his mind, that where it was small and cramped and tight was not only from pressure, but immaturity. Her faith was a terrible thing to behold, to live up to fail to live up to. He allowed himself to wish again for another self-indulgent moment that she had killed him in that room, that he had provoked the wrath that had coiled in her like an adder. He had seen death in the tension in her arms, in her closed eyes and bent head, expected it, welcomed it. And then she had forgiven him. And he was lost. In his mind, he saw Yalis's face each time Jane had broken her in that room. Each time Yalis had been confused, frightened, and terrified of the inevitable loss she faced, as she could not turn Jane, as Jane had converted her, comprehended her, comforted and loved her, vowed to protect her, and then set about doing that with the whole strength of the person she was. Jane had broken in that room only to reveal more strength. Yalis had broken beholding it, and so had Thane. Garrus's arms enfolded him, and Thane was safe. The first moment of safety since disarming Yalis's pistol, safely out of Jane's terrible regard, safe from weeks of slow, inevitable evisceration in each moment. Jane had known to deliver him to Garrus, and then walk away, asking nothing for herself except that Thane did not pawn what had been stolen from her for some unknown favor he would gain in betraying her. Yes, he would keep her safe from being known as a goddess several times over. Again as having compassion and strength, focused wrath and purpose under stresses others could not bear. Your divinity and impossible standards and benchmarks of performance are safe. Shiha. I shall keep them so. Of course, I shall save you from that. Shiha. To be seen as extraordinary. We shall both pretend you broke as fully as you wish to believe you did. That you did not ruin a woman built to be impervious, as you laughed and vowed to protect her. As each story you told of saving other people painted a picture for her of the galaxy, reliant on your choices. We shall pretend that you did not ruin me simply through beholding it. Garrus was safety. Already knew of Jane's divinity, was not buying or selling anything. Garrus's only needs of the moment involved knowing the people he loved would not kill each other, would not kill him, would not destroy his ship and his mission. Done. Already done in Vasnam, with your faith and trust. I do not belong here, in your arms, with her trust, with her screams and reassurances in my head, with the look on her face she believes I did not see, as she lunged to kill me. Thane would try to reach for truth, try to learn to recognize it, try to admit failure and flaw. He must begin now, in the presence of those things. Jane could not provide that for him. He could not provide that for her. But they could, both, return to Garrus, their wellspring, without whom he and Jane would spin off into imbalanced and self-reinforcing darkness. Or he would. She could always draw herself back to center, some gyroscopic instinct he lacked. Thane told Garrus, I have missed you beyond bearing in Vasnam. Garrus's hands moved to either side of his throat, willing to touch him, to allow his poisoned skin to soak in with trust, to prove he was not afraid. Garrus's crest moved to his forehead, and Thane stood there, suspended, unable to set a foot on any path until Garrus showed him how, where to go. Garrus told him, my heart is whole to see you, finally see you, beyond what you were forced to be these last weeks. You're exhausted, you're hungry. What do you need? What can I do? I know you need rest and food. You push yourself too far. Garrus could no doubt smell all of that on him, burned and seized as he was, an engine with no oil, smoke and strain. I could not rest. I could not eat until I answer your questions. You have waited, and you push yourself farther, against less resistance generated from your own failings. You have accomplished a miracle in her regaining her reason. I owe you my life, and I offer you my love. And apologies that it must be this way. I saw each moment of what was done to her, and I had to offer her the opportunity to reject my presence because of that. Because I abandoned her, knowing she had you. She has accepted me and apologizes for being forced to reject my skin, and I am broken. Garrus's hands moved to caress the back of Thane's tense neck, feeling and then massaging lightly against the strained muscles. Well, let's face it. You're always at least a little bit broken. So am I. So is she. What matters is we're still standing. You two are beyond my comprehension, but not beyond my reach. And that's all that matters. She has tried to apologize for rejecting my plates, but I keep threatening to hit her when she gets close. Garrus drew back, but kept hold of his hand, led him to an adjacent door. At least get off your feet. Sit down and tell me what you have to tell me. I'll listen. You do your weird food thing. I'm sure you have some close. I want you to eat and promise to get some rest. Of course, I have some weird food close. I expected she might kill me, and I believe she was tempted to, and I almost provoked her to it. But I would hardly go unprepared to my own execution. What if she allowed me a last meal? I could not tolerate her food, the things she eats. Garrus closed the door. Then let's go to your room. Do your food thing. You're 2 shades paler than I've ever seen you. And I've seen you nearly bleed to death. Thane nodded and changed course to a room not far to walk, around a corner, adjacent to possible execution. He woodenly went to go get some prepared food, sat dutifully at a table like the one he'd sat across from her. He expected it to have no taste, but he was not entirely dead or deadened as expected. He was, in fact, hungry, and it was delicious. His first taste of tentative freedom, though still prepared according to what he had been taught while a slave. Jane knew the specifics of his food rituals from his own lips. Garrus merely acknowledged it as true, labeled it as weird in teasing, and did not press further. How that was possible, Thane would aspire to know, but perhaps could not. Restraint of curiosity seemed to be a prerequisite of kindness. Such an underrated talent, and something beyond his capabilities for now. Perhaps he could learn. Garrus waited patiently. Thane realized he would not ask any questions, just as Jane had not. They trusted him to tell the story. He set down his spoon. Yalis is in suspended animation, cryogenic storage. She gave me all the information regarding Jane's captivity and indoctrination. I have a list of medications used and the times, samples of each. though she could not provide manufacturers or suppliers, and a sample of the injection used for indoctrination. I have Yalis' account of their usages and expected results. Yalis granted me access to her current knowledge of the organization of the Hanar Compact. She and I raided the data regarding their infrastructure together, wiped out all record of Jane's captivity. We ended the lives of those who authorized and facilitated it. With the information gained from those raids, Farron and I have rescued and relocated assassin trainees from their compounds. Jane has authorized my return to the Normandy, predicated upon your permission, and I wish to continue to dismantle the compact. I thought numbly, so it could be turned into a short story after all. You're fucking kidding me. I am not fucking kidding you. I thought, in Vasnam, I have missed you so much. Why didn't you spirits damn well tell me that before we went through all of this bullshit? That's all good news. It is all good news. Now. My reticence is in the way that I gained the information. I did not gain Yalis' cooperation. She gained mine. It was all her idea. I believed myself to possibly be indoctrinated as I was following her commands. Until we were done, until I saw where her plans ultimately led, which I feared might be back to the Normandy to attempt to do harm or to eliminate targets for her own reasons. I did not communicate. I could not ask you or Jane to trust that Yalis, within seconds of attempting to infiltrate the Normandy, had switched allegiances so fully that she provided me with the means to accomplish everything she believed Jane needed. For such a good liar, you pick really fucking weird times to tell the truth. Thane shrugged. It goes with the weird food. So, Jane fucked her up a good, huh? Perhaps that is not so difficult for you to believe. Not at all. That's my girl. Once again, though, why couldn't you tell me that? Regardless of the outcome, it remains that I have seen Jane's captivity. Every moment, every second. Not only the surveillance, but Yalis' accounts and her motivations. Jane is a practical woman, and I believe pleased with the outcome. But everything I offer is the fruit of the poisoned tree. I chose to follow Yalis, to not return to the Normandy. I abandoned Jane. I was able to do it because she had you, and that is still not enough reason to watch every single moment that she knows each time she looks at me. I have those 7 weeks. Things even she does not know. In my mind. And that I can never forget them. Could you ask her to choose to look at me, talk to me, see me again? If I knew every secret wrested from her mind through torture? She saw Yalis as a prisoner, someone she needed to protect, someone she needed to save. She treated Yalis as she would any in her adopted crew, with her blend of toughness and kindness. She was tormented with Drell assassin venom. Yes, she is immune to Yalis as she is to me. But in the end, she was only granted 7 seconds. I witnessed her breakdown from a whole woman to a woman with 7 seconds under her control. I also followed the woman who, as far as I knew, had been successful in permanently destroying Jane's mind. Would have been easier if you'd just tortured Yalis into it, huh? Yes and no. I should not indulge my need for torture. Garrus looked at him with far too much intuition. Then you're in the wrong line of work. Thane nodded. That is a truth. Jane still has use for me. I shall be of use. And for such a good liar, you're doing a good job. Thane nodded again. Of course I am. You would expect no less. All right. So we came out of this ahead, except for the personal cost of her health, safety, and peace of mind, not to mention yours. You know, sometimes I just want to tell you to both fucking spit it out. But I know you won't. Thane's smile veered to the dark. As though you had not been asked to keep her secrets safe. Garrus rolled his eyes. She doesn't need to actively create them or confide them as much as she seems to need to when you're around. Because we both rely on you for your example of what right action is, what honesty is, what perspective grants. What she does not confide in you, she would never confide in me unless it were absolutely necessary. I have pried and intruded. I have done her harm you would never do. And I do not deserve forgiveness from her or from you. Yet she has granted it. I do not believe I deserve forgiveness. I do not wish for you to believe that her confidences are the fruits of anything but the fact that she and I poke and pry at each other until something breaks. What I have of her in my head, she does not wish to inflict upon the greater world, certainly not upon you. And from that, you should glean that she adores you, and that you do deserve the best she has to give you. You grant her peace where I do not, and possibly never will. She will always see Yalis in my skin, and she is not wrong. I was Yalis. I had more years of being Yalis than Yalis has had, and as long as I am of use, I shall serve. But I do not believe it is because I am deserving of glory, but because I need to atone for a lifetime of pain and abuse. Garrus leaned back, arms over his chest. Give me an example of necessity. One she would approve of me knowing. Yalis learned that she had ampules implanted under her skin. One for you, one for me. Just in case she needed to take us both down after our declarations of independent contractor mutiny, and my repeated insistence on the same in private conversations. Just in case she needed to die, and needed us to live without possibility of interference. Just in case I had you under my control enough to follow my commands, which she knew I could do, had I the will. Garrus smiled. That doesn't surprise me at all. There's a story about Rex I should tell you. And do you have the will? Of course, I have the will. Perhaps not at the moment. She has urged me to learn my limits, and I have heretofore been incapable of that. Perhaps tomorrow. Perhaps tomorrow sounds like a good idea. You've done and said enough. Please, Invasnom. Rest. Thane felt tears crowd his eyes, and opted for momentary honesty again. You should go to her. I should urge you to go. I should tell you that I will rest, that you need only trust that I will, and that you would be able to go be a commander without fear. But beyond all other gifts that could be granted that I do not deserve, I wish for you to stay with me and watch over me as I sleep. I am afraid of who I am, of what I know, of what I might do, of what I must do. Please, hear my broken truth, and choose for me. I believe that is the first time you have asked for something that you could have taken. Perhaps today. She gave you to me for a reason, and I am yours. You know you insisted that she choose for me, and she told me that 4 weeks would not be enough to break you, and that if you were indoctrinated, we would do something about that. And I agreed. Thane closed his eyes and smiled, the wreckage of his mind on the shore, slowly being worn down, smoothed out by the presence of embodied hope, providing a lapping, inexorable tide, idealized and delivered, and the unsung hero of Garrus. You bring me peace, Garrus. Perhaps tomorrow I will believe I deserve it. Today, I will cling to it as something that allows me to breathe. Garrus moved to lift him as Thane realized he was not even considering standing. Numb and struck dumb. He was safe, and he was tired. And Garrus gave him permission to be those things. Sleep, Invasnom. I will watch over you. I will not leave. I do not wish to leave. He was able to rest for the first time in what seemed an eternity.